everybody, Tom Marks here with PC Gamer, and I'm here to talk about XCOM 2. I got a chance to play XCOM 2 last week at 2K's offices, and I gotta say, I was really blown away. It's just basically XCOM Enemy Unknown, but better in every possible way. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't mean it as a bad thing to say, oh, it's just this old game, but, you know, improved. It's really just like they took everything that you would love about the first game and just made it better. One of the examples of that is character customization. They went overboard with what you can do with the character customization. You can change their face, their attitude, the way they stand, the way they talk, the way they look, the color of their armor, the pattern of their armor, the pattern of their gun, the color of their gun. You can name their gun. You can name them, of course. You can change their nationality, their race. There's just so much you can customize about your characters. Their tattoos and scars and that sort of stuff. And the more of those unlock as you use them more. And they just emphasized trying to build relationships with these characters, even though they're very fragile and they might die in missions, and that'll kind of just draw you into the thing more. And of course you can ignore that if you really don't care about it, but the depth of the customization was just staggering. It was really, really impressive. I thought it was going to be, you know, 8 different colors that your gun could be, but it was like 100 different colors that your gun could be, and, you know, a dozen or so different patterns that your gun could take on. It was pretty amazing, and that goes along also with just how beautiful the game is in general. Like, XCOM has never really been known for its incredible visuals, that is to say. You know, not saying that it's by any means ugly, right? It was always a nice looking game, but it wasn't known for its graphics in the way like an Unreal game was or something like that. But XCOM 2 is just prettier. It's just they made it look nicer. They made everything, the water effects, the facial animations. That's one of the things I really noticed is all the characters have facial animations, but also the facial animations during cutscenes were just like really impressive. Just very, very not what you would expect from a top-down strategy game that really has never really been known for its animations and its graphics. It's been known for its strategy first. And that is improved as well, I think. The different unit types have done a really good job of kind of shaking up the gameplay a bit. I really was a fan of the Ranger class that has a sword. You can also kind of path them down going invisible and staying stealthed and that sort of stuff. But the sword was a very, very unique weapon compared to XCOM Enemy Unknown, and suddenly you can do damage while sprinting, but that also could potentially put you in a very risky place. The class that comes with a little drone too is very interesting because it allows you to do things that you would normally need to be right next to someone to do from distance. So you can heal people with status effects, you can hack terminals, which is another new feature that I'll get to, and you can do all these things from distance. And also it's just kind of awesome to have this little robot pet that you can either skill towards kind of a healing drone or something that will attack robots and that sort of stuff and hack turrets. And hacking is actually one of the weirdest new additions to XCOM, but I think it worked really well. You kind of, when you hack something like a terminal or a robot or whatever, it brings up this little screen, and basically you're given a risk-reward decision. You can say, okay, I want to try to disable this turret, or I want to try to make this turret fight for me. And the disable will be more likely, but it's also not as good. And if you fail at these decisions, something bad can happen. But it's kind of random, just like in shooting. You know, the higher your hacking skill is, the more likely you are to succeed in these things. It's the same way as your accuracy, basically. So it's just kind of a different skin over the same gameplay, but it can have these kind of interesting effects, and not just interesting effects during the actual match, but could give you bonuses on the map screen out of that individual mission as well. Another very cool change to the XCOM formula that I was a fan of was destructible walls and destructible cover pieces and that sort of thing. It makes explosives much more important. There was a moment in a mission that I did where there was this giant kind of fuel tank thing, and I was shooting a rocket at a robot, and I was like, you know what, why not? I'll just make this fuel tank blow up too. And kind of unexpectedly, it just made the entire section of the building it was next to just disappear, right? There was no walls for a huge portion of it, and now this building that I was about to storm very stealthily and kind of walking up to by the windows and stuff, now I could just walk into it. And when I did that, I realized that now there was less cover and I was more exposed, and I started getting attacked by these new kind of snake viper things that spit acid at you and are ridiculously difficult. One of my favorite changes also was to the sharpshooter, which used to be basically the sniper. The sharpshooter now has two different paths to go down. One is more of a kind of pistol-wielding gunslinger, and the other one is what you'd think of as a sniper. But the sharpshooter's basic ability is the ability that lets you target anybody that you can see, basically. So if your allies are way ahead and they can see someone, you can still target them from far away with a sniper rifle. And it's just kind of defines the character. You have them hang back and deal a lot of damage if they're sniping. And you don't have to wait until later in a soldier's progression tree to really get these things that kind of feel core to them when you start using them. Destructible walls makes you think a lot about how you approach a battle and where you want to stand and, oh, what if this gets destroyed? But another thing that does that is that enemies will now drop weapon modifications and other items sometimes when they die. So you could be killing an enemy and then suddenly they'll drop an item thing that you weren't expecting them to drop, and this far off place on the map that you don't really have any point of going to suddenly has an objective and suddenly has a reason for you to be there. And you now need to think differently of, okay, do I want that item? Can I live without it? But those items tend to be very, very good. And if you get them, then you don't have to build them or buy them later. You know, you'll just have that item. You can also do interesting things like pick up wounded people or pick up dead people and bring them back with you. So if you have a dead soldier who has got great items and weapon modifications on them, the only way to get those items back is to actually pick up that dead body and extract it with you. Death is still major, and it actually now has a bit more consequences than it did before. I asked Fireaxis if there was anything sort of like a Lazarus machine, you know, if there was some way to bring dead bodies back and then you could revive that soldier, bring them back to life, and they said absolutely not. They don't want to be doing that. Maybe that'll get modded in, but it's not something that they want part of the core game, and I'm really happy with that decision. I think it's smart that they wouldn't abandon kind of a core piece of XCOM, which is if you screw up and someone dies, then that's on you, or you got to load your save. And on modding, I'm just really impressed with what they're going to do. Like I said, I think this game is really impressive as is, and I'm really excited to get my hands back on it, but I'm even more excited to see what modders do with it. They looked at the Long War mod and they said, man, how can we make making that sort of thing easier? And they just made all these modding tools available. So XCOM 2 is going to launch, and it's going to be, from what I played, pretty dang fun, and it's only going to get better when the modding support starts to be taken advantage of effectively. Now, these impressions are all based off of only a few hours of the game. I played a couple missions, I played through the tutorial, and I'm really impressed with what I've seen so far. It made me want to be playing more of it. It made me want to go back to it. You can check our full review of the game when it comes out in February, and I'm sure we'll have more coverage of it on PCGamer.com until then. Thanks very much, and we'll see you then.